lot. What do they actually want? What is it that they are asking us to deliver? What do they think of our products, and what do they want to see going forward?
They say, Ben, we really don't spend enough time on infrastructure. Can you make that a little more challenging for us? No, I mean, what they say is, the number one thing I hear, half my job is time spent talking to senior IT leaders, and what they commonly say is, I want to get out of the infrastructure business, right? Make it simpler for me. Anything that's a non-differentiating, or what often they say is a commodity IT service, it's things like storage and networking and compute, right? Even security to some degree. They're saying, if it's something that doesn't differentiate me, if every single business in the world has to do these things, give it to me as a feature in software. That frees my teams to start to focus on things that are more important, and that's what they're looking for VMware to help deliver.
Excellent. So Kit, you've been working on these cloud-native applications. Talk to me about it. What is it all about? Do you think we're going to make a dent here in this business?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so there's a lot of interesting things going on. You covered some of the technologies, some of the trends. But if you take a step back and when we go and talk to customers, I think the big thing that they're thinking is exactly this notion that you brought up. Software is eating the world, right? Doesn't matter what industry they're in. They are in part a software company now, right? The products they build, they have software components to them, whether it's an iPhone app or some cloud service. And many times consumers, they make their buying decisions based on how good that app is, how good that cloud service is. I know I've done that for various things in my life, right? It's like, the product's okay, but this iPhone app's awesome, it's so easy to use. And so, in that mindset, a lot of these customers, like one of them we talked to, they actually outsourced their entire development team, right? And so now it's like, how do you react to the market? How do you react quickly? How do you beat your competitors to market, getting those features and new functionalities out there? That's the thing that's really going through their head. And so when you take a look at it, right, there's a lot of changes that need to happen to be able to produce software faster. You talked about this notion of, these, container technologies, Docker, these microservice type of applications, right? And I think, you just can't move that fast when you have a monolithic architecture. I've seen this again and again. You have to break those things down into these types of microservice architectures, and that's what allows you to move faster. So, a lot of what we're doing is really trying to help that transition. And it goes more than just helping customers run and operate things in production, the infrastructure focus that you mentioned, Chris. It's all about really taking those applications from the developer's laptop and helping them move over to the production side. So a good example of this is our new product, CodeStream. Right? CodeStream actually helps automate the continuous integration, continuous deployment process to allow customers to get their applications to market faster. vSphere 6, a bunch of great new innovations there. Things like instant clone that you talked about. Really, really powerful when you combine that with Docker and container technology to allow for very rapid provisioning of applications. So, this is just the beginning. We're just, getting into this. We're doing a lot of open source work and, work with Docker and Google and so forth. But there's a lot more to come.
Excellent. So, Joe, yesterday you were telling me some story about some customer that deployed an Evo Rail and they were in love with it because it took a huge piece of infrastructure and turned it into a little 2U form factor. So what do you think about Evo, and what are our customers saying about that?
I think the real way to understand Evo is to think of it as the Lego building block of software-defined data center. It's the easiest way to put it for me. And one of the examples I had recently was actually a school. I'm a governor for a school, and they asked me to come and advise them on their IT, which is kind of weird but fun. And they said they wanted to go with VDI, and I thought, there's a good idea. I've never thought of that. Apparently this is the year of VDI. As the former EUC CTO, it absolutely is. It always is, every year. And we looked at speccing out their server, we looked at beefing up their server to deliver over 500 desktops to all the students, etc. And by the time we priced up the upgrades to RAM, memory, and software, etc., all that, I actually went and had a look, and it was cheaper to buy an Evo Rail and rack it up. And they got rid of this huge, great, massive rack that was actually in the corner of the headmaster's office. Replace it with all 2U Evo units. So, that made a big difference for them. And I'm seeing, rather than just being, something you rack up in data centers, I'm now talking more and more to retailers about it being that one thing they put in each store. If you've got a rather large store that has quite a few servers on the back end, typically now, again, they're looking at sizing it down. So it's much easier. And of course, there's no differentiation in specifying hardware like that anymore. As I always say to people don't come and use your website because you specify SCSI cable lengths better than the other guy, right? It's not what it's about. So get it in. And I remember from when we first started the Evo project over 3 years ago, one of the big things was we have to get this thing operating in such that, 0 to VM in less than 15 minutes. The fact that it upgrades in place with no downtime, and that it suffers fault tolerance, suffers a failure of a node in and of itself. And to do that, you start to take away a lot of the worries of actually operating infrastructure and get on with just doing stuff.
Right. I think there's this, this idea within VMware engineering around how do we contain complexity, right, and expose simplicity to our customers. And that's something that we're seeing in a lot of different places, some Evo Rail, Evo Rack, as well as things like you mentioned, VMware integrated OpenStack, right? This is another great example where OpenStack came as this kind of golden opportunity to say, hey, I can do it cheaper, I can do it better. But what many customers found was that yeah, the OpenStack was free in terms of no upfront cost to download the software, but they had to hire hundreds of people to go implement it. And many times they didn't implement it right, and they had all these problems, and so on and so forth. And so what we're offering with VIO is really this opportunity to say we can give a curated experience, right? We can contain that complexity, but at the same time, as you mentioned, we can give them APIs they can use to avoid things they worry about, like vendor lock-in and industry standard APIs and so forth. So this is something that VMware engineering is continually trying to advance on.
So I mean, but the sort of simplifying stuff, I always think back to, you talked about Teslas earlier. You think about a modern car, the dashboard and the controls haven't really changed, right? It's still, how fast am I going? How much energy have I got left, whether it's fuel or electricity? And I've got 2 or 3 pedals and a steering wheel. But underneath, there's an immense amount of technological advancement that's gone on. Now hundreds of CPUs within a car, but it's way more efficient. Yes, it's way more complex, but it's way more efficient. It's actually cheaper to build and run than maybe cars were a while ago due to economies of scale. So, but you've still got that same sort of level of control that you had before. But there's an awful lot of effort has to go into simplifying things like that. So it's not easy to make something simple. In fact, making something simple to use is the hard route to take. And I think with Evo, we've proved that despite us taking that hard route, we're really going to make a difference.
Now let's just put this out there for the partners and what the impact is on you. Right. Let's show of hands, SIs out in the audience. All right, how many of you say, you know what, I love coming to work every day so that my team has to spend all their time getting VMware's own products to work together? Right? You don't even say that. So what we're trying to do with simplicity is not take away your specialization, right? What we're trying to do is, when you're delivering our solutions, we're going to allow your teams to focus more on business critical apps, have more industry vertical specialization. These are critical skills where it's almost a void today if you think about it. But there's not enough expertise out there in the market. And those are more expensive skills, so this is going to make you even more valuable and closer to your customers because you get to spend more time talking to them about business innovation, about new emergent cloud and mobile apps and platform-free applications, about Internet of Things and how that applies to them. And the reason you're able to do that and elevate your status as a partner is because you're not wasting your time doing mundane tasks, just keeping the lights on. These are things that we're trying to take off your plate, and I think that's important to all of you out here today.
Yeah, I was given the chance last month to do the sort of kick-off speech for one of the largest integrators that there is in Europe, systems integrator. And after that, I got to sit down and spend time with their management and board. And the general theme of the conversation was that they see themselves no longer as systems integrators, but moving to becoming service integrators. And how, just like we're managing a transition at VMware, how do they manage a transition as an SI from being a systems integrator to being a service integrator? And how's that going to manifest itself? And what services are customers going to want integrating? How do they present those? So it's almost like everyone's moving up the stack together. So how do we move up the stack together and help each other as we do that?
Yeah, and I think, if you look back at the cloud native space, right, you see companies like Google and these guys. This is what every enterprise wants to be. They want to be Google, right? They want to be Twitter, whatever it is. And these guys do things very differently than enterprises. They operate at a different level of scale. And in order to get that level of scale, you've got to simplify the basics, right? You can't be mucking around at the low levels of infrastructure. Right? They've done all these things to really standardize infrastructure, treat them, like, as we say, like cattle, so they're kind of, dispensable. You can throw one away, go get another one, they're all identical, right? So it's these fundamental transitions and moving up the stack. And this is an industry-wide thing, right? We fundamentally believe it. We want to be on the front of that, on the cusp of it. But at the same time, this is going to happen irrespective of whether we're driving it or not. And so I think it behooves all of us to help our customers drive that forward together.
So that's great stuff. Now, we talked a lot about simplicity and making our customers' lives easier. Chris, you talked about what our customers want. They don't want to be mucking with the infrastructure. Talk to me about vCloud Air and how they're reacting to that, and especially some of the announcements we made on Monday around improving the networking connectivity, the security, bringing NSX to that world.
Yeah, Ben, I think over the past, especially 6 to 9 months, I've seen just a tremendous amount of growing excitement in our customer base around vCloud Air. And the announcements Monday are significant, right? This gives us a true leadership position in public cloud when you start looking at networking and security and bringing micro-segmentation inside and outside the data center. That's a very significant step forward. Our partnership with Google is continuing to show significant thought leadership for VMware. But the most important thing is this. Customers aren't saying I have to go all in with the VMware cloud. right? They're thinking much broader than that. They're saying, okay, I have certain public cloud service providers that do a very good job for very specific applications, and some of them are probably Platform 3 applications. But they're also saying, wait a minute, applications that deploy there, I'm not going to fool myself. They're probably going to be there for their entire life cycle. But now I have this other huge swath of applications, many of them haven't even gone to cloud yet, that I need a lot more flexibility. Because I might do a merger in another 6 months, and I might have to deploy an application to another geo in the world where there's not a public cloud presence. Yeah. Or I might have to deploy them to a branch office. Right? So there's all these what-ifs where I have applications that I want to be future-proof. I want to be able to take them wherever I need to without any type of stickiness with a single service provider model, and that's the value that they get through vCloud Air, and that's why we're seeing that momentum continue to build.
And partners have picked that up. I was amazed. At the end of last year, I received an email. And this email was about, what are you doing for off-premise DR as a service? And I thought, well, this is interesting. I'm going to read this. It might be a competitor to our vCloud Air DR as a service. And I read down it, and I read down it, and I read down it. And I realized it's one of our partners trying to sell me vCloud Air Disaster Recovery as a service with a wrap on it, which I thought was kind of cool. But it leads me on to a really cool story I had with one of our customers was using our DR as a service. And the way that you use that is you pay for storage and replication, and you have and allowed a certain amount of uptime of your application on vCloud Air. And during the initial testing phase, they then spun it up and they realized the application ran faster and better on vCloud Air than it did on-premise. And so what they did, they ended up flipping, and they now run production on vCloud Air, and you almost have DR as a service back to their on-premise. So I think people, once they take that step, and if I ever ask customers and partners, where one piece of advice to someone who's not done it yet, is try it, give it a go. You may surprise yourself, one, how easy it is, and two, how much of a difference it can make, and it could actually be better than what you're doing on-premise.
And we're seeing customers in the pharmaceutical industry making massive investments there. I think one of the best quotes I've gotten so far about vCloud Air, this was referring to our vCloud government service. This was in a senior member in the U.S. Department of Defense went to me and said, you know what, it's actually harder to get into a Carpathia data center than it is to get into the Pentagon today.
True.
Cool. So you get not just the agility and the simplicity, but also the security and isolation there.
Right, things they certainly want.
So I've got a question for you, actually.
Yeah.
So we've had a lot of talk yesterday, and in fact over the past week or so in some of our internal things, about going cloud first, and specifically going cloud first with vSphere. What does going cloud first with vSphere actually mean? You're the man driving our cloud first initiative, so I thought it'd be better if you could explain what that actually means.
So yeah, you may have heard Pat Gelsinger talk about this cloud first. It's really what we're doing to change the culture of our engineering organization. And telling them, I mentioned this earlier when I was talking about putting engineers in a cave and telling them to come back in 3 years with a finished product. That doesn't work in this world anymore. So what we're doing is changing them and telling them, assume that you have to do very frequent incremental updates. Assume that you're delivering those to the cloud first, in this case vCloud Air. Right. That may not be a released product. It may be a beta version, or it may be something that we ask our partners to play with before it's completed, and we can deliver that as an on-prem thing. And we would do this on a let's say on a quarterly basis. You do 3 or 4 of those, and then you take that product, whatever shape it's in, shrink wrap it, and deliver it also for on-prem. Right. So it really completely flips the development model from the old waterfall model to a new agile cloud-first model. And vSphere is the first, and because it's the largest of our products and engineering teams, we've decided to take this on head-on and go and attack it and ask the vSphere team to be the first one to actually deliver in this model.
I think it's a good point that none of us in this industry are exempt from these forces that are happening, right? We're all trying to help our customers get to this new reality, but at the same time, we have to help ourselves as well, right? This notion I talked about before that, the quicker a company can release their software into the market to get it to their customers, that's differentiation. And VMware is no different. We have competitors. We need to get our software out there as quickly as we can. So this transition is both an internal one for VMware as well as an external one, and most likely an internal one for all of you, our partners as well. So again, this just means we have to have extra focus on how to do this. I mean, to your point, software as a service is a fundamentally better way of producing software than the traditional ways. The software is higher quality, it's more reliable, more secure, all these better properties. It fundamentally meets the needs of customers faster.
Yeah, I want to tell you another story. Sorry for a little divergence here. But so I talk about cloud first, and I was at AirWatch last week talking to our friends there and brethren who are building that product. And that company really is a cloud first company. When you look at how they do their development, it's 100% tilted towards delivering in the cloud. They do bi-weekly releases, minor releases, where they do new features, they do bug fixes, they very quickly get fixes out to their customers. They have 90% of their customers running the latest version of the software, which means they're not back fixing 5-year-old bugs anymore. They're addressing the latest needs of their customers and keeping up with them. But what I realized is, and so that's what they do, and then they take a shrink-wrap version of that and also deliver it on-prem. What I realized was all of this is great, doing all this cloud-first work, but the minute they start delivering an on-prem version of the software is when they have to do all the integration with the ecosystem, with not just our partners, but all the other third-party solutions that a customer is running on-prem, whether it's their Active Directory or email or chat or IPAN, and that's where our partner ecosystem comes in, and that's where this constant barrage of me saying simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. We got to make that whole on-prem story together with our partners simpler to consume for our customers, the same way that the public cloud is simple. And that's how we don't have the option on-prem to do that all by ourselves. We need the help of all our partners to deliver on that. So, changing gears for a second. I know you were working on EUC projects for a long time, and one of the things that we haven't spent a lot of time talking about here is a partnership that we had with NVIDIA in the latest release, and the NVIDIA grid support that we put in. Tell me a little bit about that, Chris.
Yeah, I think there's two big things. There's first the NVIDIA piece, and then of course we made an acquisition yesterday of NVIDIA. I can touch on both of those. So yeah, the NVIDIA one we're really excited about, because when you look at VDI, which by the way a lot of customers are excited about, and when we go and talk to customers...
It's the year of the VDI.
Yeah.
This year.
It's always the year. It's getting better every year. So this year is special. I'll tell you why. So we go and talk to customers, and they love the properties of VDI, the ability to really simplify management and security and control, while at the same time providing access to their employees or their customers on any device. Right? They can pick up any device, phone, tablet, PC, connect in and get their apps and data. But a big aspect of VDI, and possibly one of the big issues with it previously, has been around user experience, right? Especially as applications have become more and more 3D intensive, even operating systems like Windows, right? So, we've had technologies like VSGA, VDGA, both of which were great for the use cases that they solved, but at the same time, we thought there was a better way to do it, and now what we're doing is actually working with NVIDIA to offload all the graphics processing into the hardware, and to do it in a very secure and multi-tenant way. So what this does is get you basically native performance in terms of 3D graphics rendering, but to do so in a way that's multi-tenant and secure where that hardware can be shared, just like we've done with processors and other things in the past. So that's really, really, really cool, and part of vSphere 6. The other one, to shift gears a little bit, is to talk about what's going on with NVIDIA. So this is an acquisition we just announced yesterday. NVIDIA is in what we call the user environment management space, and let me take a second to explain what that is, because I'm not traditionally an EUC guy. That's not what I did before. I was kind of a vSphere guy, and wanted to try something new. So I kind of came into this space being like, wow, I'm learning a lot and trying to wrap my head around it. And the thing I found was that VDI, again, it's a great solution. Customers are very interested in it, but it's always been plagued by challenges of the technology hasn't quite been there, right? Whether it's performance, we assume server workloads work a certain way, but it turns out desktop workloads are very different. They're very random write heavy. And so a lot of our storage, pieces weren't quite there. Management, very, very complex. You have these persistent versus non-persistent architectures. So it's just, we look at it as a lot of complexity. So what we did beginning of last year was sit down and say, okay, we think the technology is finally here. Let's put together these building blocks to actually make this happen. So a key piece of that was, of course, the instant clone technology that came out in vSphere 6 we just announced, and Cloud Volumes, which we acquired last August around VMworld time. It's now called App Volumes. At VMworld last year, we announced this just-in-time desktop piece, and that we think that's going to revolutionize VDI, radically simplify it, radically improve user experience, radically simplify management. But there's one other piece that we were missing, and it was really about when you provision that VM, you create it, you basically clone it instantaneously, you insert all the user's applications and data. There's still all sorts of configuration settings. What's the wallpaper that user has? What recent documents do they have? What settings and customizations to the different apps do they have? What permissions and so forth. So all that stuff needs to be configured. And this is exactly the type of space that NVIDIA plays in. So we're really excited because now what we can do is offer a full environmental experience so that that user, we can recreate that experience on the fly. And the really powerful part over time is that what we can start to do is make management between mobility and desktop more consistent.
Isn't that just same old profile management? We've been talking about profile management for years. What's different about NVIDIA?
So first of all, it is a type of profile management, of course, but profile management, again, I don't want to get into the weeds here, is there's plagued by a lot of practical problems. It's like, okay, do you load that, copy that entire profile in? Yeah, the roaming profile. There's just a lot of these, and it's like, you start to get wound up around the axle about it. It's just so many crazy details. But some of these new architectures are allowing for just-in-time provisioning, a lot more lightweight stuff, and that's really what we're after. Okay. Trying to make it lightweight and simple.
So it's similar to like the cloud volume, snapping loads of apps on in a fraction of a second, and you're snapping the configuration in a fraction of a second, and at the same time, you're spinning the machine up in a fraction of a second. So you can have these hundreds of desktops customized in a second.
Yeah, very quickly. Just a few seconds, you get a brand new desktop. But well, it's not a brand new. It looks like the same old desktop happens to be brand new. In any case, I don't want to get too much into it, but I think it's easy to. Or it's hard to appreciate how complex this space is and the power and value that it has for customers. We talked to dozens or even hundreds of customers last year about this, kind of going through it, and they're all very, very excited about it. So this is something I'd really encourage you all as partners to really engage with and engage your customers with.
Now, I think from the partner perspective, there's a couple of important points here. We can argue if 2015 is the year of EDI, but I think there's no argument now that 2015 is the year that VMware is the unquestioned leader in end-user computing and mobility, right? Now, thank you, right? A lot of agreement. Now think about this, right? There's a certain vendor, right, that's been in this space. That's like that family member you got to see at Thanksgiving, right? just their mere presence just annoys you, right? So we've had customers that are coming up, especially we see it all the time in the healthcare vertical, where they're talking to folks in the field like Frank Nyman are saying, Frank, please, just give me these few things, and we're all in with VMware. And I think 2015 is the year that this happens. And the other thing, too, from a services perspective that I think all of you want to think about, I talk to customers, and I see the same theme all the time. They have a Windows team that's doing PC lifecycle management. They have a mobile team that might have come out of the BlackBerry group, right? They have another team where they don't have a team at all dealing with web and SaaS applications. And they're saying to VMware, and they're saying to our partners, help us with this transformation. Please come in with a transformation professional service. Tell us what a mobile architect role even looks like, and what are those requirements, and how I should sap that, because the customers in the field, they really don't even know, and they're looking for all of you for guidance.
I think it's actually very interesting. There's something that you have in the world of software and software development, which has been, it's been given various terms over the years, but essentially it's called shipping the org chart, right? However you organize your development teams is the products you're going to ship, right? You're going to ship the org chart. We talk about this a lot, don't we, Ben? But when you go to talk to customers and you see they have a Windows desktop team and they have a mobile apps team and they have a web team, they're going to ship the org chart as well in terms of how they go to their users and how their users have an experience. So you always have to look at yourselves and say, well, how can you help customers go and reorg themselves so that the org chart that they're shipping to their users is fundamentally different? And I think that's really important to understand because a lot of what we get involved in, and Chris will talk to this, and what I think is that when we go to talk to customers, we're bridging gaps between departments. And I think as partners, you'll agree that quite often you go out there and you're helping one part of an organization know that another part of an organization, one, exists, and two, actually quite likes them and does want to talk to them, and gets together. And so there's an awful lot of business transformation that has to go on in order to support the adoption of applications before we even get into Kit's area of, third platform cloud native applications. It's a whole different game.
I think that's a good point, though, because, when virtualization was on the rise, the really interesting thing about virtualization was how transparent it was, right? You could really insert it in there. You didn't fundamentally have to change your business processes, but it gave you so much benefits and allowed IT to be so much more flexible and agile. Yeah, it was a great thing, right? And so, but now what we're doing in the second phase is really driving that business transformation. They have to change their processes. They have to learn, get a new DNA, learn new things. That's just because the industry is transforming. So I think, the challenge is much greater, but at the same time, the opportunity is much greater. This is why we keep hitting on this notion of you got to get up the stack. You got to work on those bigger level problems.
So, okay, let's change gears now and talk about storage for a minute. I managed the vSAN team for a couple of years as they delivered the first version of vSAN, and I'm really proud of what they've done in this release. They delivered all-flash version, they delivered rack awareness, double the performance, 5x the performance if you use the all-flash version, so great enhancements in less than a year. Yeah. But at the same time, we also delivered vVols. And virtual volumes is something that I know our partner ecosystem really cares about. So which one of you guys wants to talk about vVols and what they do for our partners and the excitement there?
I love vVols, man. I really do. I mean, my introduction into VMware was when I was at Commvault. I was doing a lot of high availability clustering work and helping customers do things like rebuild Exchange 5.5, Windows NT clusters on new hardware with different fiber channel revs. And You know, in those early days of even Fiber Channel, right, in the dark corner when I was curled in the fetal position, I thought there's got to be a better way, right? And it was VMware. But you know, part of the challenge of VMware is all our partners know all too well is when we drop VMFS on a storage array, we start to there's an exchange, right, of features. Like I got all the richness of VMFS, but then some of the hardware engineering that's been done on the array, I can lose some of those features, right?
You lose context.
Exactly. And the other challenge here is, you know, there's a lot of PhDs in the Bay Area, but for a lot of customers, if you want to try to do asynchronous replication of VMs to different data centers, you practically needed a PhD, right? It was very complex to do these things. So the fact that I can now expose the richness of the array, I can start doing more intelligent snapshotting, I can do replication, right? I can do this now at the VMDK level. These are really exciting things. I was meeting with one of our partners last night, SolidFire. They were really excited in terms of where we're actually going. To move storage forward. Right now, this is, you know, what this means for partners is a couple of things. Right, VMware from a management perspective, you know, we're exposing a rich set of storage policies. And the way that I always tell partners to think about VMware is this: if it's a commodity IT service, if it doesn't even differentiate you with your competitors, then you can assume that VMware will probably just have it in our platform. But now through vVols, all the richness, everything that you're doing from a differentiation perspective, we're exposing that to you through APIs. You can integrate with us in Vasa, right? And now you can really start to stand out among your peers, even more so than you've ever done in the past.
That's the really cool thing, because VMFS is almost like this sort of obscuring layer you put on top that didn't allow the great power and differentiation that different storage vendors had in their products to shine through to the end.
Right.
So vVols allows you to actually expose all of that stuff, and you say manage it through policy. If anything, it's a really good story for our partners that they can now do some differentiation and bring some of the really cool features they've got up all the way through to the VM administrator with vVols.
Yeah, I mean, so just to dig into that a little bit, I mean, so when you put VMFS onto a disk, what it looks like is just a bunch of blocks, right? I mean, you don't know if it's a VMDK, you don't know if it's a config file, you don't know which VM it belongs to, you know if they're all part of the same VM, you know nothing under there, right? It's just a bunch of blocks. And there's different ways you can try and go around, kind of hack around it, but it's difficult, right? And it's challenging to do. So the power of vVols is exactly that context, to pass down that context about who this is, which VM is it, what's it doing, what's the SLA on that VM. What that allows you to do is then manage on a per VM basis rather than a disk basis, which is really the way customers want to manage.
But while we're still talking about storage, one of the things that went through that kind of got missed that I know you did some work on was IO filters.
Oh yeah, IO
So
filters, one of my favorite projects. So yeah, we, as part of vSphere 6, we just released actually a tech preview of something called IO filters. If any of you have worked with Windows, you know that it has a similar concept, and there are literally thousands of solutions available, both in terms of security, you know, all the antivirus products that run on there, the backup products, the snapshotting products, the replication products, all of those are implemented in what are called IO filters, which is a way of intercepting IO going to and coming from primarily storage disks, but also networking. And what we did about 1.5 years, 2 years ago is we started a similar project on ESX because our partners were frankly asking us for better programmable ways of interacting with the I/O stack. And we wanted to be very careful because I worked on Windows for many years, and I can tell you that if we don't get the design of this right, it'll cause a lot of problems and cause a lot of blue screens and crashes on Windows. So we're taking our time on this. We're working with partners. We have 10 partners working with us. I'm sure some of you are here now to deliver solutions on top of I/O filters. And I think you're going to see a lot more as we go forward in the next year or so, both finalizing that solution and a set of APIs and also broadening that program so more and more of our partners can add deep value to our I/O stack at every level of the stack. So I'm really excited about it.
You know, as you mentioned before, I was at Quest Software before, and at Quest Software as a CTO, I used to work with various of the larger players, the gorillas, as we used to call dancing around the gorilla. It was VMware and Microsoft and Oracle, etc., and we built tools around those. And I remember conversing with Microsoft were great, they shared loads of roadmaps, it was great to work with. Oracle just, well, very different story. But VMware was very difficult, it was kind of like a black box. But what I've seen since I've joined over the last 4 years is almost a complete transformation to embracing an ecosystem. And one of the great things I see sort of about the announcement of vSphere 6 and everything we've talked about today, as from the perspective of someone who used to, for 10 years, build tools around a vendor and partner with them, is that really with all this technology we talked about, doing vVols and IO filters and the NVIDIA grid stuff and everything else that we talked about, Evo, etc., What we're really doing is we're really enabling partners to engage better and start doing more value add and actually giving more opportunities for improvement and plays and tools and constructs and differentiation that allows to build some amazing solutions around a really sort of core open platform that we have at VMware that really gives people choice as well. I think that's really important to understand, is this sort of drive-through choice. And with VIO is a really good example. And we haven't really talked much about VIO and their VMware Integrated OpenStack. And the good thing there is we've got one particular customer where they built the most amazing vCloud internally, but because they hadn't talked to the developers, no matter what they did, it was never going to be like the developers. It could be the best internal cloud ever, but they kicked back. And they were looking for various answers, and the developers decided to wait to get these guys to say, we want OpenStack. And so there was, other vendors, Red Hat, Mirantis, and others being listed as something to look at. And I just remember the CIO told me it was fantastic. He said he had this moment where 5 guys in IT were dancing around his desk with joy. Literally said they ran to him excitedly because they discovered VIO, which is the answer to all their problems, in that they could start to answer developers' questions, they could give them an OpenStack API, but maintain all the features that they didn't want to lose, like storage vMotion, like DRS and SRM, all the other stuff that they've known and loved and felt supported their online gambling platform, which is what they actually drive. So it's really cool, some of the stuff we're doing to stay open in this space too.
All right, guys, we're going to run out of time. Last question. A call to action for our partners. What would you say you want to see them do over the next year with all the new products that we've announced and our ecosystem?
Yeah, well, I guess for starters, a few things, right? We've certainly thrown a lot into with vSphere 6. Don't lose sight of NSX. And I do not walk out of a customer meeting across any industry vertical where they completely get it, right? It's not even just about the benefits of microsegmentation, which they see as an absolute requirement today. It's also about time to value and the fact that even our most efficient financial sector organizations today, network and security provisioning for them is probably about 2 weeks. And for other customers, it's even longer than that. So when you're trying to bring new services to market, NSX is huge. And for all of the interest that we're getting in NSX, we can't staff fast enough, right, to be able to handle all the implementation load. We need our partners to come in and really take that ball with us and run with it. And the second thing is work with us more closely. If you've seen something from VMware, if you haven't seen it, you're going to be seeing it very soon, is much more transparency around our own intellectual property and making sure that we are equipping all of our partners to help us scale. Because we know we cannot do this alone, we cannot do it without you. So we want this to be a two-way exchange of information. I think it's very important in the coming year.
Yeah, for me, I would say that 2 things. First, on the cloud native piece, these trends are real. We're seeing customer to customer to customer ask us about containers and Docker and all these different things. And so they're not necessarily ready to go all in on them yet. They're cautious. They're trying to wrap their heads around it. But this is our opportunity to really be thought leaders for them and help guide them through this area. So if this is something that you're not very familiar with, I highly suggest you do the reading, you get boned up on it, you learn about it so you can help your customers and your own company make that transition. The second piece I would say, again, whether it's a year of VDI or not, as Chris mentioned, many analysts now are looking at VMware as being the leader in VDI and in mobility even. And so, this is a tremendously exploding space, lots of opportunity there. EUC is a business unit is doing great, and we want to continue engaging with all of our partners to drive our EUC solutions forward.
Mine's a lot simpler and a lot shorter. Come talk to us. Come and engage with us. Come and talk to the guys in the office of the CTO. We'll share with you our roadmaps. We'll be open and honest. And if you're open and honest too, we can work together on some fantastic solutions for customers. It's really that simple. So come and talk to us and work out how we can work together to make everything better.
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much, guys. Let's give them a hand. All right. As we wrap up, I just wanted to finish with one last slide and some closing thoughts. We talked about all of these aspects, and I think they're all really important, and you're going to hear more about all of these things from us, whether it's open source or openness in general, with things like OpenStack and the cloud-native applications, whether it's cloud first, the way we actually transform our engineering organization and the way we deliver software and the way we work with our partners, whether it's this new whole ecosystem of cloud-native applications and how applications themselves and their architecture is changing and the way they're built is changing, and of course agility, which is really the most important thing these days in terms of what our customers are asking us to do. But the last 2 bullets here, the last 2 balls or whatever they are the 2 most important ones to me. The only way to get agility is to simplify things. And we've done a great job of starting on that journey with Evo, but we really need the help of our partners, everyone here, to significantly simplify the deployment and the management of our software and our stack together on-prem with our customers. So this is really my call to action for you, is don't think about how do I expose my feature, how do I expose my piece of functionality in the stack, but how do I make it simpler to be deployed? How do I make it simpler to be consumed? How do I make it coherent with the rest of the ecosystem and the rest of the stack and simplify my customers' lives? With that, I want to say thank you. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you enjoy the rest of the day, and hope to see you tonight at the reception. Thanks.